As if, yes, the second assignment, we were asked to write between 50 to 100 words. And what if you write maybe, let's say, 120 words? Is it accepted? Or
What did the
maybe
instruction say again,
you
my
still have
lady
to
Rebecca?
write between the range that you were given?
My lady
Maybe
Rebecca, you
because of some
yourself,
explanation, you had maybe, let's say, 120
my lady
words.
Rebecca, you yourself gave the preamble. There's a reason why instructions are given you. An instruction is an imperative. Okay, it tells you to do. So you just listen to the instruction and do exactly that. It's a discipline. It's part of what we are training you for. You see that the earlier one was between 500 and 600 words. You don't want to be too strict, so we allow you space. But you can't exceed a certain limit. If you did, it will pour over into the soup. If you are pouring the soup into a bowl and you keep pouring and pouring, so I just wanted to add just one small ladle, just a little tiny ladle. It will pour into onto the dining table and mess everybody up. You can't do that. Okay, the instruction was clear, and I'm happy you reiterated the instruction before asking your question. We say between
Yeah.
50 and 100 words. If you write 101, you're going to get
Yes,
the
please.
yes, please. Thank you very much for understanding. So those of us who do bank,
Thank you.
you know that you are welcome, my lady. You go to the bank, then you'll be given an ATM card, and then you'll be given room to pick your PIN. Then maybe you pick 5511. Then you go to the ATM, and when you are going to cash your money, you say, oh, we're between 1 and 2 they are the same. So you key in 5512. You won't get the money. It's a code, it's a rule, an instruction given. You have to keep to it. So you type in 5511, you get access to your money. You type in 5512. I only added 1 to the figure. Well, you won't get it. Nathan, go ahead with your question. Nathan appear.
Yeah, hello, Doc.
Hello, sir. Good morning. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
oh, good morning. Good morning. Please, my question is, yeah, just like what she said. So, in answering the question, should we just go ahead and just answer straightforward without doing anything?
Just answer the question as you understand it. We are trying to check your critical ability. So every extra information I'm giving is not helpful. Okay? We are trying to look at how you think about the question and how you respond. So suppose you went for an interview somewhere, or you were part of the team that went for an international conference on behalf of Ghana, for example. Then afterwards, CNN or whichever international network comes to you, and they say, "Oh, Doc, or sir, so please, what do you think this whole conference was about? What do you have to say that we can take home?" Something like that. Or can you give us a gist about all this economic whatever forum that you were nominated to come and attend? You're not going to write essay. You see that? Look at the space given to you. I'm using that as a scenario. So you won't have even 2 minutes. This is airtime that they are giving you to tell us what you got there. That's what we do with the space limits when we give you content. So look at the question you have been asked and look at the time and the space given to you and answer. You'll see that it will tell you how to answer it. Okay. So be guided by that. That is your critical thought at work. So if it's a minister for something, so we say, oh, I think that basically all that we have done in this maybe 3 days conference or a week, but you say, well, we have tried to make a case for Africa and our peculiar circumstances given so and so. We hope that the world will hear us and give us that breathing space we need. Full stop. You see. But if it is a whole, they are going to meet a team of people and you are going to talk and you are given 3 hours, like IEA debate or something. That preparation is also different from where we want to hear from the delegates in a summary from what happened at the contest there. So you have to be a critical mind, and we are developing that and checking that in our students. Okay, so just be led by that and then answer the question and you do fine. Rebecca, let me see. And I hope Big Boss is okay. Let me take Rebecca quickly.
Morning, madam.
Morning, madam.
Madam, please, concerning the word count, I realized on the page when I typed the words, including my name, my ID, and my group name.
Whenever you are answering, you see that I'm interrupting you. It's not to be rude, but I want to quickly help you out there. So when you are answering anything on Sakai, which is our learning management system, it has your details. When you key in and you enter, your email is there. Yes, your name. The email is the default one that you use to register when you were applying for the admission. Okay, so if you use your Gmail, then perhaps that is where email notices are going to. You should be checking that. If you use the student email and you think you've forgotten it or it's not activated or having challenges, then you check with the Sakai team or the UGCS for them to help you. But we have your email, that's what I mean. We have your name, we have your ID, and then what's the other thing? The course for the specific course. So you do not need to put all those. If, look at the condition, if you are answering questions on Sakai, or you are even sending an email, some people will be sending notices of their, their election or some website they have somewhere. If I grab you, I caught 2 or 3 people, they would nearly have been sanctioned by the university. But sometimes you want to temper justice with mercy. People just think they can exploit every system. This is a learning management system, you see. So when you do anything, we can trace you. We will catch you in 2 minutes and make sure that you are accountable. So that's the point I'm making. You don't need to put all those details because it will add to your word count. Rebecca, is it okay?
Yes, mommy.
Okay. In fact, that is even the more reason why we gave you up to 100, because we know some of you will do that. They don't know. This is level 100. So we say between 50 and 100 words. If you are writing in a crisp, concise manner, still answering the question, but taking out all, embellishment, unnecessary embellishment, answer the specific question you have been asked in your own way and be crisp about it. And if you remember, it's not timed. You have a whole week to do that. Okay. Unlike if it were a timed assessment, like at tests and quizzes, you have just 2 minutes or 3 minutes to move to the next. We normally, Precious, please mute up quickly. We normally would not give you such kind of questions. But if it is one that we want you to think through and you are always able to come back to it, that's the nature of the 2 continuous assessment exercises we've given so far. You will go and think through it and write it down, and then tweak it here and there. You can use your Word document to do that. You know that the word count is up to this, then you bring it. Be crisp. We are teaching you that. Okay. And if you know you'll be assessed, it's an assessment that will reward you, then you will be conscious of that. So by the time you keep working that way, you see that you know how to say the very important things in an elegant, very rounded way. You don't become long talk unnecessarily. If you are teaching, it's different. You want to say all you can to help the person understand. But when you are responding to people or you are imparting, you want it to be punch. If you're an advertiser, you have to have a punchy kind of, communication. Otherwise, your product will be too, people can't even keep the name of the product. Look at Momo. You see, if you have a product called, I don't know example to give, BBBB, Buffruit, the word Buffruit will stick faster than if it is pastry in the yellowish, nutritious, delicious can. That's the name of your product. But who will even remember it? But you give it a very punchy, catchy, title, and then it attracts attention, whether positive or negative. We hope it's always positive. Then you work with it. These are all skills we want you to have. Okay, so that is it. Don't put your details in. It expands what you have done there and work within the space given. I think I can take one more question. Then we move quickly to Unit 6, which I believe you are well prepared for. Keep your hand up, please, if you have a question that you want us to. Okay, so I can take Kwesi Number. Oh, Number, your hand went down again. Are you sorted now? Quickly. Okay, Kwesi, go ahead. Kwesi Number, Simon. Please go ahead, sir.
Please, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. Please, madam, I want you to give me some examples of this equivocation.
Have you looked at your slides, sir?
Yeah, I've read the book and then the slides, but I'm not satisfied.
Examples. No, you're asking for examples. That's what I'm asking. Because
yeah, I'm not satisfied. I want you to help me.
No. What are you not satisfied about?
About the examples.
What have they done? Give me one of the examples you saw. Let me use that to help you.
But the whole thing about the equivocation, I don't understand.
Listen, sir. Give me one of the examples. I can't do the lecture again for you. It is not helpful. Okay, the whole class will be waiting for you to catch up. That's not fair to them. Okay, we did this 3 weeks ago, but it's fine because you have a question. It should be a specific question after you have engaged the content. So I want to know, give me one of the examples you saw for equivocation. Let me use that to throw a little bit more light on that for you. Then we can move. Give me one of the examples that you saw, which is still not helpful. Yeah.
Right.
Are you there, sir? Find that one of those examples quickly, eh? One of the examples you saw on the slides for equivocation that you still think is not helpful, that you are still not able to grasp. Let's just look at that. So once you do that number, we can start with our unit 6, okay? And then you find out. Prince Tunde, your hand is up. Go ahead. Prince, go ahead. You are muted, so you would have to unmute quickly before you can talk, Prince. Okay, if Prince is okay, then we are good to go. Someone tell me what you saw in your unit 6. Let's start quickly. Want all the hands up who want to respond to the question, then I'll start taking it from there. Any hand up? Number, I'll be waiting for you. When you find the example, then you come back quickly, okay? So that we can thrash out that concern you have with equivocation. I think you should just do a little bit more reading. We did it in unit 2, and then we elaborated further when we engaged unit 3. And then last week we did a mock-up of it all. So we have engaged it over 3 weeks. The recordings are still accessible to you. And then tutorials is there to help you if you still had challenges. And I think you should make use of all of those opportunities. If it is still not clear, then bring the specific question you have, and I'm glad to assist you. Not the whole thing. If you say the whole thing, then you're asking us to do the lecture again. That will not be fair. Even in fact, the lecture again can be engaged. There's a record. If you go to your announcement to find the link for a discussion on unit 3 and 5. Okay. Prince Tunde, go ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Doctor.
Morning, sir.
Please, I wanted to ask a question about connotation and denotation.
Ask the question, okay?
From what I read from the book, they said most words have more than one connotation, and each connotation is usually associated with a distinct denotation.
Dear Prince Tunde,
yes, and now my question is denotation. Is connotation related to denotation in a way?
Oh, I will answer this question. One of you should do that for Prince, not because it is not a good question, it's because we have dealt with it over and over and over again. And because of the nature of our arrangement this semester, I mean, students are allowed to join other groups if it fits their schedule, but they are supposed to do so consistently. Otherwise, we'll mark time. We are doing close to 30 minutes, and we haven't started today's discussion, which is fine, insofar as we are dealing with substantive content that has not been covered. What Prince Tunde is asking, we did it in unit 2, even after doing it in person. You see that, Prince? And then we came to revise it when we did unit 3. And then we revised it last week when we did our mop-up. All the recordings for each one of these are on the site. If you are not in this group, find Dr. Nancy Miles, JMP on YouTube, and go to the playlist for UGRC 150 and enter into that list for 2022. You will find the recordings there, even if you are not specifically in this group and you want to play it back to here. Okay, we have done connotation and denotation, and it shouldn't be a challenge for us now if we are doing our bit of the work. Okay, even interactive sessions on it, all recorded and accessible to you freely. Say, okay, so let's work that way. Otherwise, we'll mark time. We are going to unit 6. So at this time, the relationship between denotation and connotation should not be a challenge if folks are doing their work well. So my email will still be accessible. If you engage that content, which is still, if you are in this group, it is still at the announcement too. The link is there to take you straight to the specific recording. Okay, so that I don't want to be doing that with you. Otherwise, you won't do well. I'll be helping you to mark time. I want you to speed up. So if you engage it and you still need clarification, even the raw slide without any commentary, if you look at the slide like that, it answers the question you asked. That one is an example of the thing you are defining. Instances, examples of it. Whilst the other one is the description. You see that I want to even respond, but I'm being hesitant because it's not a good way to help students do well. Okay, so engage that. Look at the slide, raw slide. You'll be able to tell the relationship between the connotation of a word and its denotation. I said one gives you the specific examples that the word refers to, whilst the other one gives you the definition, the meaning. So if I define it in a certain way, then I can point to some specific examples that refers to that meaning for that particular meaning given. Okay, do that work for me and get back to me via email if you still need clarification. All right, so we go quickly to our unit 6. And I would like to ask someone to read for me. Anyone who is able to read, kindly do that for us. Let's see, where is it? So it should be this. Keep your hand up if you would like to read. I see only one hand. I see two now. Let us start with our lady, Mabel Agbolo. Afterwards, we can take a Ramadogbe. Then we work that way. Go ahead, my lady. So these are the details. The topic is deduction versus induction. It is unit 6 of your textbook. These are my details. You can send an email to this. This one is a very good email now. The other ones would normally point you to the Miles UG email. That is quite tricky. Use this Nancy Miles UGRC 150 at gmail.com, and then I'll know exactly which student I'm dealing with and assist them appropriately. Go ahead, my lady.
Contrasting deductive and inductive argument.
Very good. So the lady is giving us the outline, like we do always. This is unit 6. It means by now you should know unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. As for unit 4, it's not examinable. We won't ask you anything on it. It's just helping you to navigate your way in the university. While we call some courses humanities, some social science, and what I said all that earlier. So unit 4 is not included. Then unit 5, which we learned in tandem with the earlier units. So some part of unit 5 was studied with unit 1. Some part of unit 5 was studied with unit 3 in that order. So we have covered units 1, 2, 3, and 5. And you should expect questions from those for your midterm and then the current continuous assessment you are doing. We're talking about units 1 to 5. Okay. Now the unit 6, 7, 9, and 10 are the examinable content. That means for your interim assessment, you will see units 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. You will see them there. Questions from those units there. Then for your final exam, you will see only for units 6, 7, 9, and 10. 50% will come from unit 6, 7, 9, and 10. No unit 8. Okay. So Madam is now helping us outline the unit 6. What is an outline? How you should frame your thinking as the lecture is being delivered so that you don't miss important points. There are a lot we will say. Some are elaborations, some are just to enlighten you, some are just passion being expressed. But the key things that you shouldn't miss as we lecture is what we call the outline. For every lecture you attend in this university, when they give you outline, like be minded by it, be guided by it. Okay, so that's what we are doing. And Madam says, first of all, you should know how to contrast deduction and induction. This content we are dealing with is already in your resource tool, like all the others we've done. As for the links for recorded sessions, the link, they are in your announcement too. So if you go through the announcements, as and when they come, you will see a link to recorded interactive session unit 1 or lecture 1. Then you copy that link, paste into a browser to take you there for your revision. Link to recorded lecture 2, to recorded lecture 3, even a mop-up for units 1, 2, 3, and 5. We did together. It's there. They are all there at the announcement to engage it and fill in any gaps you have. Okay, madam, please go ahead. So we are opening out the main theme for contrasting deductive and inductive argument. What should you know under that?
Particular and general statements.
Good.
Reference class and attribute class. Types of generalizations. Universal generalizations as disguised conditional.
Good. And the second main thing is deductive argument and inductive argument. So the first part was to show you the contrast, the difference between the two. And in doing that, we will point out what particular statements are and how they differ from general statements. Then, even for you to understand particular and general, see the sequence, you would have to learn reference class and how it differs from attribute class. Okay. Then, second point, under contrasting deduction and induction, we will talk about types of generalizations. And we will help you to see universal generalizations as what? Disguised conditionals. If you see a universal generalization, it is actually a conditional statement that has hidden itself. Or the So if you want to know how to interpret a universal generalization, note that it is just like a conditional. As we speak now, you don't know what conditional is, you don't know what generalization, but just know that universal generalizations are actually conditional statements. They are if-then statements. If I say, oh, so and so, I've done so and so, I'm actually saying if so and so, then so and so. So we'll get there. Very good. If you get the outlines, so I keep telling students, the skeleton is important. You get the frame like that to the end. Then now all you'll be doing as we engage will be what? Putting on the flesh. So when I'm giving you content, then you're putting it on the flesh. It helps your understanding and you really get the content proper. The second half, sister, go ahead.
4 valid syllogistic patterns.
Good.
Understanding syllogisms. Understanding negation.
Good.
Modus Ponens.
Very good.
That is affirming the antecedent. Modus Tollens. That is negating the consequence. Disjunctive syllogism. Hypothetical syllogism. Formal fallacies. Fallacy of affirming the consequence. Fallacy of negating the antecedent. False hypothetical syllogism. Valid arguments and sound arguments.
Very good. You are reading very well. So this is what Madam says. Another important part of our discussion, which is outlined above, is that we will learn 4 valid syllogistic patterns. We will learn 4 correct ways. Valid means correct, but we'll put more content to it when we see it. Okay, there are 4 correct ways of reasoning, deducing, taking conclusions out of premises. There are 4 correct ways of doing that. That is acceptable logically. Okay, there are more, but your textbook gives you just the 4, so we'll focus on the 4. Those of you doing philosophy, when you do elements of formal logic, you will see that we have so many. Okay, you see constructive dilemma, stuff like that. But here we'll do just the modus ponens, modus tollens, hypothetical syllogism, and disjunctive syllogism. Now, to help you understand, we will show you what a syllogism is. But by that time, you would have learned deduction and induction, so it will be clearer. Then we will help you understand the logic behind negation, the reasoning behind negation. When you negate, what does it do to the reasoning pattern? Okay, when you get those two, then you are able to do modus ponens, the name given to one of the correct ways of reasoning. Modus ponens has another name, which is what? affirming the antecedent. So by then you would have known antecedent and consequent. I need you to understand that the whole unit is like preparing some local abenquine, palm nut soup. We'll first pound the whatever, after boiling it, put some on it. When you come and the grandma is preparing the local, very local type of abenquine, you'll be amazed at the kitchen. Some momoni is sitting up there, that's a fish or something like that. Some kako is at the top there, some beans is sitting here, prekese is here, the whole, but by the time we put it together and you see the finished meal on your table, oh my, you see that mountain, you will become a valley before Zerubbabel. So you don't want to miss any tiny bit. Otherwise, when we want to move, you will see that you will be trailing. So antecedent, consequent, you would have learned it earlier. Okay, disjunctive syllogism, hypothetical syllogism. So those 4 up here that Madam read, these are all valid patterns of reasoning, and they are all syllogisms. There are 4 of them. Okay. Then after we learn that, if you're able to do so today, because we have 2 weeks to do unit 6 alone, that should give you an inkling of what the unit entails. Okay. But if you're able to cover up to this part, then we'll move on to formal fallacies. Now, whereas the first 4 are valid patterns, so they are not fallacies. Okay. These ones are fallacies, errors, incorrect reasoning. Okay, but they also have a name because they try to do what the correct ones do, except that they do it wrongly. So it's very imitative. It's a very fake currency. It's a fake currency that looks so much like the original. Okay, so they have also borne names. They have names. They have formal fallacies because they try to do what the formal patterns do, except that you do it wrongly. So whereas the correct pattern for, say, modus ponens is what? Affirming the antecedent. These ones will be called the fallacy of affirming what? The consequent, rather. It doesn't affirm the antecedent, it rather affirms the consequent, okay? So that's the name of the fallacy. Don't call it a fallacy of modus ponens. There isn't any fallacy called fallacy of modus ponens. It's wrong to speak that way. Modus ponens is valid. The fallacy trying to do modus ponens doesn't do it well. It has its own name. It is called the fallacy of what? Affirming the consequent. Then modus tollens is correct. I'm projecting whilst I speak, so you should be checking my movement on the screen as well, if you can. Okay. A special student, not to worry, you do fine. Modus tollens is also valid. Its surname, another name for modus tollens, is negating the consequent. So that if you don't do modus tollens well, and you rather go and negate the antecedent, then it will constitute another formal fallacy. And then there is the false hypothetical syllogism, okay? All the time, when you see content that has been added, maybe I put something in my video or in a colleague's video or lecture, okay? Your surest guide, what you can use to guide yourself is what? The textbook. That's why we want you to have the textbook, because I may be erring, I may be committing an error. Or perhaps to help my students understand, I said something in a certain way that when I engage them, I'm going to put clarity to, or I may correct it later. That applies to all the colleagues on the team, plus yourself. So your surest bet, if you have anything that looks like it is not agreeing, this one said this and this other person said that, what should you do? Go to the textbook. That one is the written guide that we are all using, okay? So there is nothing like fallacy of modus ponens. It is not correct. If you write that, you may find that in the possible answer. It is wrong. You don't see anything like that in your given textbook. Okay. All right. So that was just to help you. And then you see that the formal fallacies in your textbook were only 3. I'm telling you that if you do philosophy, there are several you can identify. So sometimes you see alternative labelings in some of our slides, and even for my colleagues that are engaging the content. They may not necessarily be wrong, but they may not be the target for our critical thinking class. And it has to be a fair system, so that if I didn't attend that other lecture, then there isn't any content that is not in the textbook that has been taught. We can't examine you on that, because then it will not be fair. So our exam questions and the content we are delivering, the focus is always guided by what is in the textbook. In other words, I could have another name, say, for disjunctive syllogism, or when we do unit 9, you see the fallacies, the causal fallacies, or you can see common thread as the name of one of J.S. Mills's methods. It is not in your textbook. It's not wrong, but it's not in the textbook. So you won't have questions asking you for common thread, what have you. You will see just what the method of agreement. That's all. That's what is there. But common thread is not wrong. Okay, I'm addressing some few concepts. So back to where we are. These are the correct patterns, and then the ones down there are the what? Fallacies. Even if we ended our lecture today, right now, here, look at how much you have learned. You know 4 valid syllogistic patterns. You know the 3 formal fallacies. You know that validity will not be equal to fallacy. If an argument is valid, then we can call it a fallacy. You see that? Then you know that there has to be, look down here, there can be a difference between what? A valid argument and a sound one. Any questions so far? Still on the outline. Hey, where are my slides? My slides disappeared. Okay, let's see if they will come. Any questions, please? Oh, sorry. Are there questions? Kobe Wells, if you have a question, Joshua Clote and Irama Dobe. I know Irama wants to read, but Kobe, if you have a question, then ask, please. Go ahead.
No, it's when you ask us to raise our hands if we want to read.
Excellent. Excellent. So please keep it on. Then I know that. We'll quickly continue. Okay. Madam, please, can you continue for me? What happened to my slides? They have all disappeared. Okay. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, just a minute. So let's start. I'll find the slides wherever they've gone to quickly, and then we can use them. So distinguishing deduction from induction. I want to help you in a very simple way to understand how to distinguish a deductive argument from an inductive argument. Kindly write this down wherever you are. Deduction from induction, how we distinguish the two in a very simple way. Then we can now go into the technicalities that we see on the screen. When we say an argument is deductive, it means if the premises are true, then the conclusion must also be true. Else, you will generate a contradiction. If the premises were true, then the conclusion must also be true. Otherwise, you will generate a contradiction. That is what makes an argument deductive. Deductive. If the premises were true, the conclusion must also be true. Else, you will create a contradiction. What does that mean? Let's look at this example. I'm still working on the projection. It should come shortly. Look at this example. If I said, women like money. Keep writing it down on your notepad. My mother is a woman. What will follow necessarily, please? If these two were true, that women like money. That's the first premise I've given you. Remember our premises, conclusion, we've done all that, okay? So the first premise is women like money. Then I add the second premise. My mother is a woman. What conclusion will follow necessarily if these two were true? That women like money.
Your mother.
What conclusion will follow? I want a chorus answer.
She likes money.
My mother likes money.
My mother likes money.
Very
My
good.
mother likes money.
My mother
Very
likes
good.
My mother likes money.
Your mother likes money.
Thank you very much.
My mother likes money.
Thank you.
Very good. Why? Why do you say that? Now I want only one hand. So why do you say that? The conclusion is my mother likes money. Why? Is it that you want to say something about your mother? No, not necessarily. If the premises, I'm giving you premises that lead to that conclusion. Okay. So if it were true, see how I'm speaking? It doesn't say it is necessarily true, actually true out there. No, that is not what deduction is saying. If it were true that women like money, and it was also true that my mother is a woman, then what is true of women will be true of my mother, because our second premise says my mother is a woman. The second premise didn't say my mother likes money. Our first premise said what? Women like money. Second premise, my mother is a woman. Maybe if I use my mother, people will say, oh, because she's a woman. Let's say my lecturer is a woman. Because your lecturer could have been a man too. So women like money. My lecturer is a woman, dear. If my lecturer is a woman, then what is true of women, all women for that matter, will be true of what my lecturer. That is why you said therefore, my lecturer likes money, or my mother likes money. This is an example of a deductive argument. It deduces, it takes the conclusion that you yourselves gave me from what? The given premises. It is already part of the premises. If you took the premises home, the two reasons you are offering to support you, if you took it home as true, you have already taken the conclusion with it. It is not someone that brought the conclusion from outside. The conclusion is already part of the premises. So the truth of the premises captures what? The truth of the conclusion also. It's a relational thing. So what is true of the premises will be true of the conclusion if the reasoning, the argument was what? Deductive. Another example. So this is an example of a deductive argument. Remember what we said of argument when you have premises supporting a claim. So sometimes when you say, you give us your premises, the conclusion necessarily follows. We don't care what the content is about, whether it is actually true there or false. We say, if it were true, senka fano say premises where you no credit, and then conclusion where ne benante. Ka wakola ke premises ne anokwale ne. There conclusion mu ba fe anokwale. If we took the premises to be true, see how we speak now? Yeah. So the conditions that make the premises true would necessarily make the conclusion also true. That is deduction. So example, another example, write it down, please. All women, again, ladies, it's our class, so don't worry. All women are cheats. My lecturer is a woman. What conclusion will follow all of us? Be careful what you say, because I'm going to grade you.
My lecturer is a cheat.
My lecturer is a
My lecturer is a
It's a cheat.
My lecturer is a cheat.
Very
Oh,
good.
you are
My
lecturer
lecturer,
is a cheat.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now,
you are a cheat.
yeah. Now you can tell that this reasoning is a deduction. You are just deducing the conclusion from the premises. You are not making any claim of actuality out there, because it may not be actually true that all women are cheats. That is contestable. I mean, Mary, mommy, Jesus' mother, Mary, is there. She's a woman. We don't think she's a cheat. You may have your mother who is so dear to you, or your lady, or whoever who is so dear. She's a woman. You don't think she's a cheat, you see. So the claim all women are cheats is not necessarily making a statement of fact out there. And the second premise says, my lecturer is a woman. Your lecturer may not even be a woman. You see, maybe the person we are referring to, that lecturer in question, is not even a woman. So we are not saying that when we reason deductive, we are talking about actuality. No, it's just we say, if it were true that all women are cheats, that's the first premise. And it were also true that a lecturer is a woman, then any You see, then the conclusion that the lecturer is a cheat will by force follow. It is a necessary relation, not a probability, no. So this reasoning is also deductive. That pattern of reasoning we just did is the one we call Modus Ponens validity. But slow down in a minute. Okay, I don't want to rush you. I want you to understand. It's a foundation. So you build the foundation and it's strong. Then whatever you build on it, we hope and trust with prayer would also be what? Strong. So we go systematically. We are trying to understand the difference between deduction and induction first. And lo and behold, the slides returned. We are moving slowly. So this is what Madam read next, and then we are now on our third slide. Deduction versus induction. Sister, read this third one for me. I think you have a good background. So even if someone else reads, please be on standby. You can always come back to us. Please read this, then we can move to someone else.
Deduction versus induction. These terms describe two types of arguments, that is, two ways of reasoning, two ways of supporting a claim with evidence or evidences.
Good.
Deductive arguments. If the premises are true, then the conclusion is also necessarily true already.
Good.
Inductive arguments. The conclusion may not necessarily follow or may not be true, even if the premises are true.
Good.
We call premises and conclusion.
Okay, so because this is not a new thing, I think Madam will work it out with us. I want you to just remember premises and conclusion. So see on the screen, we did this earlier when we were introducing ourselves to argument. I told you don't bother your head about going to the types of deduction. We'll go there again. So look on the screen now. When we have an argument, you are trying to give reasons to support a claim. We know how to identify the conclusion and distinguish it from the premises. We said that there is always one conclusion only. You may have an intermediary and blah, blah, but ultimately the conclusion will be one. You just want to say one thing. No, forgive me my other friends. And then my not friends. Now go to that one is I'm still learning. Okay. Now just take note. There will always be a single claim. That is what we call conclusion. The rest are evidence or reasons or what? Premises. So you take note of that. We also learned how not to confuse a narrative, for example, with what an argument. Narrative tells you the story and all that. So that's for unit 3 that we have revised earlier. So if we have an argument, which is what we are just recalling, we are remembering to help us make a move forward, okay? There will always be what? Premises leading to a conclusion. Now, Madam just read and showed us, and I gave you some examples myself. When a reasoning is deductive, that is when an argument is what? Deductive. The conclusion is deduced. Look on the screen now. It's taken from. Taken from here meaning it is already inside the premises. That conclusion you are drawing is already part of the premises. So they are relationally tied. The love is tight. If you hurt the mother, you have hurt the baby inside it. So the relationship is what distinguishes one argument type from the other. That is why if I said all students write exams, Amma is a student, then it has to follow that Amma writes exams. Necessarily, we don't care who the Amma is, what the content is. So I could have replaced this with what? Variables and said all P's are Q's. This thing I'm holding is a P. If it is a P, and I know something about all P's, then what I know about all P's will also apply to this particular thing. That's the logic behind that kind of reasoning. This reasoning is deductive. Why is it deductive? The conclusion was taken directly from the premises, which means if the premises are accepted to be true, the conclusion must also be true. And therefore, trying to accept the premises as true and rejecting the conclusion that comes with it will generate a contradiction. There will be a tension. There will be opposite language. You will be speaking like the one who said a bachelor has beaten his wife. We won't understand you any longer. Okay? Now, this type of deductive pattern, so it's a deductive argument. Now you understand deduction. which is different from induction. We'll come back to it shortly. But I'm taking you one step higher. Follow me slowly and steadily. Don't miss one step. Okay. So this type of deduction is what we call modus ponens. P for Paul. Modus ponens. Why is it called so? That's the name. It's like asking me, why am I called Nancy Miles? That is my name. That's the name given to me. That way of it. I may look alike. I may look like my sister, but I am not my sister. So this reasoning pattern is what called modus ponens. What is the pattern for it? Right? One small note down there. We'll come back to it. Remember, Madam told us, your colleague said, modus ponens is also called affirming the antecedent. Okay, so put it down. Let's continue with what we're doing. What are you trying to do? We are learning how to contrast deduction from induction. What did Madam tell us when she read? She says, look, if it is deduction, look on your screen now. If the premises are true, it will require necessarily that the conclusion must also be true, else you generate a contradiction. But what about induction? Oh, he says, oh, as for induction, even where the premises are true, if we assume the premises to be true, the conclusion is not necessarily true with it. Okay, so if you got that, then look at the second example here. Now take Irama. She was second on the list. So Irama, please read the example down here that we have labeled inductive argument quickly.
Inductive. Ghanaians are hospitable. My mother is a Ghanaian, therefore she is hospitable.
Very good. Most Ghanaians are hospitable. My mother is a Ghanaian, therefore she's hospitable. Now, do you realize that even if we accepted these two premises up there to be true, if we took it to be true, that most Ghanaians are hospitable, and we also assume that, okay, let's take it that my mother is a Ghanaian. Maybe my mother is not. Maybe my mother is Ivorian or Togolese or Russian, for example, okay? But we don't want to argue with you over it actually being true or actually being false. We just say, let's grant that it were true. That what? Most Ghanaians are hospitable. Then we also grant it to be true that my mother is a Ghanaian. Can we necessarily, even from these two granted premises, can we conclude, therefore, that she's hospitable? Necessarily? I want a correct answer. No. Very good.
No, madam.
We can't. Very good. We cannot necessarily conclude that. Why? Because it is still possible that this, my mother, is part of the few left out here. The expression, it was most. I said most. I didn't say all. If I say most, there is still an exception. I've left some people out. Okay. So it is possible that my mother could be part of the few. So if I granted the premises to be true, the conclusion does not necessarily follow. That's what makes this reasoning inductive. It means you are inducing, you're forcing it onto the premise, you're forcing the conclusion on the premises. And I jokingly tell students that, like the way some sisters force themselves on their brother, they're forcing. So that I can remember when you are revising. No offense intended. You can force the conclusion onto the premises, because then they can wipe you off like that. It is possible for the premises to be true, the conclusion false, and yet no contradiction will be created. That is what inductive argument is. If you got that too, then now tell me, why do you think, let's look at it. I already put the answer right there. So 3 says, since the security man was the last person who left the building yesterday, then he stole the project leader's laptop. We saw these examples, all of them, when we did our arguments. We're introducing you to arguments. I just didn't show you which one is deductive and which one is inductive. Now that's what we are doing. So it could be true that the security man was the last person who left the building yesterday. Yes, it could be true. But it doesn't necessarily mean, necessarily, by force, no, that he stole the laptop. Not necessarily. It could be the laptop owner who stole his own laptop because he wants a new one. He wants people to contribute or the company to replace it for him. It could be. So this reasoning, if we accepted the premise, what's the premise here? The security man was the last person who left the building yesterday. What's the conclusion? So he stole the laptop. We could accept the premise to be true, and yet we are not obliged necessarily to accept the conclusion that came with it. That will make this reasoning inductive reasoning. Then the last one on your screen, the number 4, which is an example of deduction, says what? All mangoes are fruits. Look at it very well. I'm showing you a deductive argument. Earlier on, we told you that when we are doing deduction, we are not necessarily interested in whether it is actually true or actually false. What makes a reasoning valid by deduction? When we say it is valid, see how I introduce a new word. It means we say the reasoning pattern is deductive, to deduce. So if you deduce validly, you may want to write it down. Then where the premises are true, the conclusion must also be true. Where your deduction is done correctly, validly, then it will require that, granted that the premises are true, the conclusion must also be true. Now, the thing is, sometimes people try to deduce, so they are deducing, but the deduction is what? Invalidly done. Invalidly done, okay? That is where you will see the fallacies I mentioned earlier. So that reasoning is also deductive, but it was what? Incorrectly done. So it's not a valid deduction. So we'll label it as what? A fallacy. Now, here again, we have seen down here, look on your screen, this is another valid deduction. All mangoes are fruits. My pen is not a fruit, my dear friends. Watch, the pen is not even a fruit. Then it cannot be a mango per the given premises. So this reasoning will be valid, just like the modus ponens we did earlier. Why? Look at it very well. All mangoes are inside the set of fruits. Those who know Venn diagram, mango will now be the circle that is inside the square. Everything inside the circle will be inside the square. Venn diagram, okay, if it helps you. If it doesn't, just picture what I'm saying. If you are a mango, then you are a fruit. Everything that is a mango is inside the big set of what? Fruit. That's the meaning of this universal statement. All so and so have done so and so. It's a universal statement. All this have done that. It's a universal. All so and so have done so. All cats are mammals. All women like money. All musicians are rich. All politicians are corrupt. All lecturers are this. All you see, when you speak that way, you are speaking universal, like a law. Okay, follow me slowly. So if I have a universal statement like this, what I'm doing is I'm actually also saying if X is a mango, look on the screen, then X is a fruit. So universals are actually also what? Conditional statement. If this, then that. All who love me will obey my commandments. Jesus is speaking now. All who love me will obey my commandment. That's a universal statement. Another way of saying the same thing is what? If you love me, then you will obey my commandment. So universal statements are actually what? Disguised conditionals. They are conditional. Conditional is if this, then that. We are, may you see. If you wash my car, then I give you 10 Ghana. That's a conditional statement. You can rewrite that as a universal and say, all who wash my car get what? 10 Ghana. So I'm saying that if you see a universal like this, all mangoes are fruits, it just means what? If X is a mango, then X is a fruit. All mangoes are fruit. Now look at what we did next. Watch. We said my pen is not a fruit. It means my pen is outside of the big set, Nankasa. It's even outside the big square. Don't you see then that it will be outside of mango? Yes, it will, because mango Nankasa is inside the square. The mango itself is the set of mangoes inside the square. So if you come and give the second premise, which says My pen is not even a fruit. My pen is outside of the very big building, which is the square. How can it be inside the mango? Okay. That is why this conclusion is also valid. It's a valid deduction, just like the first one we saw here. Okay, just like this one. All students write exams is saying if you are a student, then you will write exam. All students, a set of students, circle, are inside the set of what? Those who write exams, the square, big. Okay, all students are inside the set of all who write exams. Then you said Amma is a student. This one, Amma is a student. Amma is inside the circle, which is already inside the square. See? Yeah. So if Amma is a student, then it has to follow that she writes exam. That is, she is inside the bigger set. This is valid. It's also a valid deduction, but the pattern is not the same as the one we are doing down there. This first one we wrote down, we said is Modus Ponens. What we are seeing below, still as another example of deductive argument, is not Modus Ponens, but it is also a valid deduction. The conclusion is taken directly from the premises. Which pattern of valid deduction is this second one here, numbered number 4? This one is called Modus Tollens. I call it Modus Timothy. The other one was Modus Paul, so that you can see one is P and one is T. Sometimes when you are listening, it might get convoluted, mixed up. Okay, so this one is Modus Tollens. All mangoes are fruits. My pen is not even a fruit. Then it has to follow it is not a mango. Okay, so this is Modus Tollens. This would have been Modus Ponens, the Paul one, if I said all mangoes are fruit. My pen is a mango. If I said if my pen is a mango, then it has to follow, therefore, that my pen is a fruit. Valid. But that would have been Modus Ponens. Like the example I gave you, women like money. My mother is a woman. Then it will follow that my mother likes money. Okay. Now, if I want to do tollens, Modus Tollens, with that example that says women like money, how will I do it? I'll just start and say women like money. I want to do Modus Tollens now. My mother does not like money. Then it has to follow therefore that. Then she's not a woman. Okay. Someone will say, oh, but we said mother and woman. Remember, we said we are not looking at what is actually true there. We are looking at the pattern of reasoning. If this were so, this would be so. And if this is so, this would be so. Therefore, if this, then that. We are just looking at the relationship. So if we started and we said, women like money. My mother is a woman. Then that one there has to follow that then she likes money. Modus Ponens, Paul, affirming the antecedent. Now, if I come and I start the same thing, women like money. My lecturer does not like money. What I'm doing now is negating the consequent, the second one now, okay? So I'm going to introduce the third concept, antecedent and consequent in a minute. But look at what is happening this time. Women like money. My lecturer does not like money. I'm bringing the second part of our statement there first, negated. My lecturer does not like money. There has to follow that, then that my lecturer is not a woman. So this is also valid, but it is not Modus Ponens. This will be Modus Tollens, just like the one we are seeing on our screen now, the pattern. So all mangoes are fruits. This thing I'm holding, the pen, is not a fruit. It's a negation of the consequent. Then it has to follow, therefore, that it is not a mango. If you are following me so far, then you would realize that we have learned some good stuff. What have we learned first? The distinction between a deduction and induction. Clear distinction. Don't confuse it with any other given way of distinguishing. If you look into the textbook, they have been shown some false ways that people have tried to distinguish deduction from induction. That is not the correct way. The correct way is what we are giving you. If the premises of an argument demand that the conclusion should also be valid, should also be true while the premises are true, then that reasoning is what? A valid deduction. See, I've introduced valid now. Yes. Whilst for induction, it is possible for the premises to be true and the conclusion false, and there is no contradiction created. That is what you use to clearly distinguish deduction from induction. Okay, so we've learned that. The incorrect ones, I can point them up later for you. Incorrect way of distinguishing one from the other. I think they are in the slides. Some say one moves from general to particular and particular to general. No, sir, it's not correct. The correct way to distinguish deduction from induction is to say what we have learned so far. One will require the conclusion to be true if the premises were true. That is a valid deduction. Whilst the other one says, oh, it's possible for the premises to be true, yes, and yet the conclusion false. That will be induction. Okay. If you got that, then you know one thing for certain. You can add it to your nuggets for the day. This is what I have achieved this morning in this class. I know how to distinguish deduction from induction. Then two, you know the names of 4 valid deductive patterns. What are they? Modus Ponens, Modus Tollens, hypothetical syllogism. I'm projecting that again. And then what? Disjunctive syllogism. You know the names, just the names, you know. You know that Modus Ponens is also called affirming the antecedent. Excuse me, you know that Modus Tollens is called negating or denying what the consequent. Negating means denying, you turn it upside down, you negate it. Okay. Negating or denying the consequent. You know these two. As for these two, Modus Ponens and Modus Tollens, you even know the pattern, the way it is done. But you know the names of what? Disjunctive syllogism and hypothetical syllogism. We haven't learned how to do that pattern of deduction yet. We'll go slowly. Now, in trying to understand Modus Ponens and Tollens, you would see that we showed you invariably the wrong way of doing Modus Ponens and Modus Tollens, where instead of affirming the antecedent, someone rather affirms the consequent. It will be a fallacy. But slow down with that for now. Just know what you know with certainty, please. We have shown that if the reasoning is correctly done deductively, then we say it is a valid deduction. So the word valid describes what? A deductive argument done correctly. So when you have modus ponens, it's a correct deduction, it will be valid. If you have modus tollens, it's a correct deduction, it will be valid. Sometimes you are trying to deduce, but you do it incorrectly, like we have said, and you generate a fallacy. That will not be a valid deduction. Okay, so let me top up with one tiny little bit, then I'll take your examples and you practice more. Okay, where we have deduced, so back to our slide, I'm trying to introduce you to sound, the word sound argument. That's where I'm going to. Let's use this example. Okay, Socrates, I hope I have it here. Okay, let's use that. Okay, I don't think it's here. Okay, so let's write this down. It will be helpful. All birds fly. I'm trying to introduce you to sound argument. Sound. That's what I'm trying to do now. How to know when an argument is sound. So all birds fly. Write that down. Then a bird is, excuse me, all birds fly. That's the first premise. The second one, a dove. You know a dove, D-O-V, B for vulture, D-O-V. A dove is a bird. Therefore, a dove flies. Okay. Is this valid or not valid? If you think it's valid, why? If you think it's not valid, why? This is one of the exam questions. Very cheap, 5 marks if it's final exam, 2 marks if it's IE. All birds fly. A dove is a bird. Therefore, a dove flies. Is this valid or not, and why? If it is valid, which pattern? If it's not valid, which pattern? I need someone to talk. Now, because I asked folks to raise their hands, we have 15 hands up. So someone who is able to answer. Let's take who can answer this for us? Wow. I don't know who to call now. Okay, so let's call Williams. Owadier, thank you. Williams, go ahead.
Okay, madam. So the first question is,
Williams, hold on for a minute. I want to mute all. Yeah, there's too much noise at the background. William, is it at your place there? Hold on, hold on.
They all down.
Okay, so I've muted all. Williams, unmute and let me hear. If it's your background, then we'll take someone else. Very nice. Go ahead. Williams, or what? Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is all birds fly.
So all birds fly. A dove is a bird. Therefore, a dove flies. Is this valid or not? Answer that first.
Madam, please, it is valid because.
Good. So it is valid. Correct. I'm coming. I'm showing you how to answer critical thinking questions. So it is valid. So when you say it is valid, you earn a mark for that. The next one I say, if it is valid, which type of valid form is it? Please say. Please answer.
So please, it is a deductive. Yes.
It's what? Your background is not helping us at all. Say. It's modus what? I can't hear you. Which valid pattern is it? We know it's modus. Is it Paul or Timothy? Say. Is it Modus Ponens or Modus Tollens? Is it Paul or Timothy? Answer that. I'll know which one. Paul. Okay. Modus Ponens. Very good. So that earns you the second mark. Some people will not answer the question the way they have been asked. So they lose marks. They don't know. Tell me it's valid. Tell me which type, because that's what the question says. For example, like what I've asked, and I repeat it again. All birds fly. A dove is a bird. Therefore, a dove flies. Full stop. The given, then the question says, which type of, what is the argument above valid or not? If it is valid, which type of validity is it? If it is not valid, which type, that kind of thing. So first you tell us it is valid. Then you earn a mark for that. Then you tell me it is a modus ponens type of validity. You earn the second mark. Maybe if I say if it is this, so there might be some sub questions like that. So you earn your mark for each one of them and get perfect score. All right. Okay. So this is modus ponens. Now, someone else help us explain why. If we put all the hands down, I'll know the new hands that come up. Okay. Then we can always bring it up again. Jehoshaphat, you want to answer that for me? Why is it a modus ponens valid pattern? Why? Jehoshaphat Noble appear. Go ahead, Jehoshaphat. If Jehoshaphat is not able to answer,
Hello.
Go ahead, Jehoshaphat.
I said that the reason why it's modus ponens is that we are saying that the modus ponens is where there is no negation. It affirms the antecedent. So we are saying that all birds fly, and then the dove is a bird. So there is no negation. It's actually affirming what we said in the beginning. So the conclusion is that the dove flies. So that is why it's
very good. That's fine. Thank you, sir. That's helpful for now. Sometimes there can be negations inside, but it will still be modus ponens. So the reason, thank you, sir. So the reason why it's modus ponens is we are affirming the antecedent right after the main statement, which is the main premise. All birds fly. The antecedent is the birds, all birds. Okay, X is a bird. Okay, so the antecedent part of this statement is for the set of birds. All birds fly. X is a bird, then X will fly. That's what we are saying. If X is a bird, then X will fly. That is what we mean when we say all birds fly. So the antecedent statement, that is what Jehoshaphat tells us, is what we affirmed next. After saying all birds fly, what did we do next? We said a dove is a bird. So we affirmed the antecedent. We brought the antecedent just as it was there given to us. We brought it next. Then we concluded by saying, therefore, a dove flies. Consequent. That reasoning pattern is what we call what? Modus ponens. So why is it modus ponens? It is modus ponens because right after the premise, the main premise, what we did next was to affirm the antecedent. This is what we are saying. So back to our screen. All students write exams. This all students write exams is another way of saying if X is a student, then X will write exam. If we open it out that way, we are able to tell what the antecedent is and what the consequent is to help us open out and know which one came first and which one came afterwards. I'm trying to take you all the way to antecedent and consequent. So on your screen now, look, take note, we are moving all the way to show you sound and how it is distinct from argument. When we say an argument is sound, it goes beyond validity. We are going there. But as we do that, we are mopping up on the way, picking some very technical ways that will help you how to distinguish antecedent from consequent, because then that shows you why a certain reasoning pattern is called affirming the antecedent, whilst another one is called what? Denying the consequent. Why? Which one is the antecedent and which one is the consequent? So that next time Jehoshaphat is able to say it easier that this reasoning is modus ponens because it affirms the antecedent. Okay, then it's easier. So look at your screen now, and I want Kobe Wells. Rama didn't read earlier, or oh no, she did. So Rama, continue with the read. I want a very book. When you are reading, read assertively, so that your colleagues can benefit because we are recorded. Please go ahead.
Universal generalization
Excellent.
as describes conditional. We can clearly determine the antecedent and the consequence of a statement when written as a conditional or if-then statement.
Very good.
The if clause. Consequent, the then clause. Example, if X is a man, then X is a bully. Antecedent is X is a man. Consequent is X is a bully. If X is a student, then X cheats. Antecedent is X. Consequent is X cheats.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are saying that if you have a conditional statement, if you study, then you will pass. That's a conditional statement. If Kofi is a man, then Kofi is a bully. That is a conditional statement. If you wash my car, then I'll give you 10 Ghana. That is a conditional statement. If you love me, then you will obey my command. It's a conditional statement. How do you say an if-then statement? A statement that comes in the form of if this, then that. We describe that kind of statement as what? A conditional, there's a condition attached. If this, then something will follow, okay? Now, whenever we have such a statement, and I told you that universal statements are actually what? Conditionals in disguise. So if I say all women like money, I'm saying if X is a woman, then X likes money. Don't change their positions because I said all women like money. All women. So women becomes the antecedent part, okay? Then liking money becomes the consequent part. That's what we are trying to do now. Now, whenever you have a conditional like this, whether it was given to you as a conditional, straightforward, like we have on the screen, or it was a universal statement that you have opened out to read as a conditional, there's an important thing you must know about conditionals. They have antecedent and consequent. Every conditional statement has an antecedent condition, this one, look on the screen, which then leads you to what? The consequent, the result, the outcome. So if you study, then you will pass. If you love me, dear, then you will obey. So the antecedent thing, what must come before is what? Love me. Then what will happen? Then you can easily obey me. That's what Jesus is saying. People are thinking of it differently. You can't obey outside of love. If you love the person, it will show in how you do things. If he's a man, then he's a bully. This is what the person is saying. If he's a student, then the consequence is that he will cheat. Now, these are all statements that are conditionals, having an antecedent, the if clause, the statement that follows the if. The if is not included. The if only points you to the antecedent. Okay, then the then clause, which is what? X is a bully. That's what Madam just read. So if I gave you a conditional, you're able to tell what is the antecedent and what is the consequent. The antecedent is a complete statement on its own. It has to be true or false on its own. The consequent must also be a statement that can be true or false on its own. We don't want fragments. Your possible answers will have that. So if I say all women cheat, and I ask you what is the antecedent of the statement, all women cheat, you have to open it up. All women cheat will become, if X is a woman, then X will cheat. So your antecedent is what? X is a woman. That is a complete statement. Don't say the antecedent is woman. Woman is not a statement. If I say woman, will you say true? You won't say true. All birds fly. Antecedent is what? X is a bird. Consequent, X flies. That can be true or false. I didn't need to. X represent any variable. Okay. So if X is a student, then X cheats. Antecedent, X is a student. Consequent, X cheats. Those are the parts that have been put together to create the conditional statement or the universal. Now, if you got that, that is what is happening here. Look up again. We are going all the way back up as I learn to help you see how it is that we called that earlier statement what? Deduction back here. Okay. So all students write exams. Amma is a student. Why have we written Amma is a student? Because when we write all students write exams, we rewrite it as a conditional. It will be if X is a student, then X will write exams. Then what happened next? We affirmed the antecedent. We took X is a student and put it back there. Amma is a student. That's the next premise, this one. Then we concluded, therefore, S writes exams. So this reasoning is valid, is a valid deduction by which pattern? By modus ponens. Why? Because of what is happening in the second premise here, this one. What did we do? We affirmed the antecedent. Okay. Now, Jehoshaphat told us that, so we did well there. Then we want to show you that when the argument is valid, whether by modus ponens, modus tollens, hypothetical syllogism, or disjunctive syllogism, we haven't done this, those other two. Slow down. We can't eat everything, otherwise it will choke us. We want to make sure we understand modus, or the modus something, either modus Paul or modus Timothy. That's our target first. Okay. Now, if the reasoning is valid, and there we go, the premises are all true. The premises are the reasons you are offering are all actually true out there. Then the reasoning has a higher quality. We label it with a higher quality, which we call what? Sound. We don't say then it is sound. It's not just valid, because for validity, it may have nothing to do with actual truth out there. Okay, so we then say then the reasoning is what? Sound. So a sound argument will be like the one that you wrote down. All birds fly, a dove is a bird. Then it follows that a dove is what? A dove that's what flies. Why do we say it's sound? Oh, because it's already valid. We know the valid pattern. Modus Ponens, Jehoshaphat told us. And then in addition to being valid, all the premises are true. The premises are what? All birds fly. And the man you need to, yes. And it is also true that a dove is a bird. So not only is the argument valid, but it has what? True premises. Therefore, it is what? A sound argument. Excellent. So now you can distinguish sound argument from what? Merely being valid, or sometimes the argument is not valid at all. It means as soon as you have an invalid argument, you don't have to even worry your head over. I'm going to check whether the premises are true. It can be sound. Because for it to be sound, it must first of all be valid. Then the premises should be true. Those together will now make the argument even a better one. That is what will be what? Sound. So if I describe an argument as sound, then it presupposes that it is already valid. Soundness is higher in quality than validity. Valid will only mean that granted that the premises are true, the conclusion will necessarily follow. So that kind of deduction will be what? A valid one. So validity here may not necessarily be sound. An argument may be valid and not be sound. But as soon as it is sound, it means it is already valid. Okay. When do we have an example of a valid argument that is not sound? Suppose I said all elephants lay eggs. My lecture is an elephant. It will have to follow that my lecture lays eggs. And it is valid by Modus Ponens. Now you understand. Yet it is not sound. Elephants don't lay eggs. Actually speaking, actuality. Okay. So that would be an instance of what? A valid argument by Modus Ponens, yet not sound, because it is not actually true out there. If you got that, then we can now move again slowly but steadily to our next slide. Let me pause and take questions, because some of you engaged the discussion and looked at the slide, so they may have questions ahead. I even wish I wouldn't continue. Is every hand up here meant to read? Only two have read so far, Irama and my earlier reader. If it is not to read and it's a question, I permit you just unmute and ask your question. I see 9 hands up. Letitia is here, Isaac, Delasi, Rhoda, Mariohene, Ayaba. So I want you to ask, if it's a question, kindly, you just unmute and ask. It will help us because the hands are to read. Okay, so we don't have a question. They are all to read. Very good. Then we move on. Well done. I can quickly add one tiny bit.
Madam.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Please, with the sound argument, it's not really clear.
So you understand validity, isn't it?
Yes.
If you understand validity, then when you have established that the argument is valid and the premises are actually true by observation, if we were to observe that it's actually true, all the premises, the two of them, then we'll say that then it is sound.
Sound, okay.
But sometimes you can have a valid argument, but the premises are not true. Like the example I just gave. And when I say they are not true, observation doesn't support that. Like elephants lay eggs. My table is an elephant, therefore it will lay eggs. This will be valid, Modus Ponens, but it's not sound as well.
Not sound. Okay, yes. Thank you.
Thank you too. Now we can continue reading. If you have a question, don't hesitate at all. I think it's a very well comported class from day one. I've said that. So keep it up. We'll have a good time all the time and you will do well. It will show in your performance. Let's take Joshua Clotte, please, to read the slide. Everything now that we are projecting will be what we have covered. I just wanted to cement. So read for me, sir.
Correct distinction. Deductive and inductive arguments. Deductive argument. An argument is deductive when the truth of the premises guarantees or proves the truth of the conclusion. In a good or valid deductive argument, if the premises are assumed to be true, then the conclusion must be necessarily true. In a valid deductive argument, it is impossible for the premises to be true and the conclusion to be false at the same time. If not, you create a contradiction.
Very good. I don't think we have a question there. It has been covered well. So go ahead, sir. Read the next slide, please.
It is wrong to say deductive arguments move from general premises to particular conclusions, while inductive move from particular to general. That is ambiguous.
Yes, let me explain that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So if I asked you to distinguish a woman from a man and you said, oh, women have long hair and men have short hair, we'll have a big problem with you. That's ambiguous. Why? Because we could have women with short hair and beautifully so, and we could have guys with long hair and handsomely so. You didn't help us by that kind of demarcation. That is what happens when someone tries to distinguish deductive argument from inductive argument. And that's so by saying that deductive arguments move from general premises to particular conclusions, whilst inductive will move from particular premises to general conclusions. Yes, for some of the instances, but it is not a clear-cut distinction, just like the example I gave with woman and man. Okay, so for example, if I said Kofi is a boy and he's a bully. Yao is also a boy and he's a bully. And our friend who just read Tete is also a boy and he's a bully. Therefore, I conclude that all, I said boy as advisedly, our friends are men. Okay. So when I conclude all boys are bullies, see how I started. Kofi is a boy, is a bully. Yao is a boy, is a bully. Tete is a boy, is a bully. So I've given you 3 premises. Therefore, I conclude that. Therefore, all boys are bullies. Now, even if we accepted all the 3 premises to be true, you will see that we say, but it doesn't necessarily follow that all. We just had particular instances that are true. It doesn't mean all boys. All boys include those who are yet to be born. If you say all men are so, we are speaking about men, I mean, people that are now going to enter into their mommy's stomach and be born and grow up to become men. You are speaking about that. How do you test them directly? Okay, we'll learn that maybe next week as part of our slide. So it is potentially inclusive of all the particular instances referenced there. When you say all those who and that's so and so, all these have done that, all that, you are speaking generalization. Okay, we'll learn the types of generalizations, and I think today we focus more on the Unit 6 substantive content. These ones will help you to launch into the Unit 7 as well. So let's go slow. My point then is, from particular instances, if you conclude about the general, we will say you reasoned inductively. It means it is possible for us to accept your premises. We will not be required necessarily to accept the conclusion, and won't create any contradiction. So that is a good example that may support this way of distinguishing the two. Okay, it will be inductive to move from particular premises to general conclusion. But there are some other days you are moving from particular to particular, but it is not inductive. Or you are moving from general to particular, and it is rather inductive. That's why we say, don't use general and particular to distinguish the two. It's not clear. For example, if I said Tete is taller than Kwe, and Kwe is taller than Mui, these are organ names, or Odoi. So Tete is taller than Kwe, Kwe is taller than Odoi. It will mean that then Tete is taller than Odoi. Simply put, A is taller than B, B is taller than C, will mean that A is taller than C. I hope you get it. None of these statements is general. None of them is general. But this reasoning is a deduction. So if you don't do the demarcation well, you will make us think that if we don't see general statement, then there is no way we will arrive at a deduction. But we are able to deduce where there isn't even a general statement. So all these things I've told you in your textbook, just showing you that it would be wrong, therefore, to say that deductive arguments move from general to particular conclusion. In other words, general premises, then you conclude with a particular statement. They say no. Whilst induction moves from particular to general. It is not a clear-cut distinction. So the correct one is what? Tete, please read on. The correct one is what we have done. Now read on to the next one. Note.
Note that. Madam, please, is it Tete or Joshua Cloth?
I'm so sorry. Joshua Cloth, go ahead, eh?
Okay. Note that deduction is topic neutral, but induction depends on subject matter.
Very important. We have seen topic neutral already. When we introduced you to critical thinking, told you that the course critical thinking is topic neutral. We reflect on all disciplines, from law to medicine to theology to sociology, psychology, philosophy, to where we are reflecting. So our tools are neutral to what the topic under discussion. We reflect. So the tools work on every discipline. We are not concerned about the subject matter when we are doing critical thinking. It applies there. The same thing with deduction. When we say we are reasoning deductively, it means that we can be saying all mangoes are are pens, and all pens fly. It will follow therefore that all mangoes fly. Because our concern is with what? Look down there, the third point, with the form or pattern or structure of thoughts. We are looking at the structure, the pattern. Okay, if this were true and that were true, then this will follow. If we took this, then this will follow. That's what we are looking at, not the content proper. But induction is not like that. The I one, that one is looking at the degree, the subject matter. So if I said, back to our earlier slide, look at this. The one that I said, look at our example on the screen, example 2, induction. Most Ghanaians are hospitable. I said most. So the degree of likelihood is high. If it were true that most Ghanaians are hospitable, then my mother is a Ghanaian, the conclusion she is hospitable doesn't follow necessarily. That one we have established. But it's highly likely. Probability is high. Because we said most. See the language, most. If I had said few Ghanaians, the probability will be less. So here we look at the content, the subject matter, when we are trying to assess the quality of our inductive reasoning. Okay, but for deduction, we don't look at the content. All trees sing, and all who sing go to heaven. It will follow that all trees will go to heaven because we are looking at the pattern. That's a hypothetical syllogism. Okay, that's the point Clotte is making over there to help us understand. He says, when we are reasoning deductively, it is topic neutral. We don't look at the subject matter or the content of the discussion. We are only focused on the pattern or the structure or the form of thoughts. And I said, look at your textbook for more examples if you need them. Okay. This one on our slide now, we have seen it in the introduction. Madam set us up nicely. I think she prayed today. We had a very good, effective session. We saw all this earlier. The valid patterns. Okay, you are given 4 types. We've seen all this: hypothetical, disjunctive, modus ponens. We've seen all these already. We even know their surnames. Okay. As for modus ponens and tollens, we know the pattern itself. And then hypo and disjunctive, we have put it in the fridge so that we don't overeat. Otherwise, we will bloat. Okay. Now, the very tiny one left. Then we'll walk through our slides and see our introduction outline and see what we have covered so far. Then we'll do practice till end. We still have 10 minutes or so, I think 5 minutes, whatever. Now see on the screen, you see this word syllogism, syllogistic. What is the meaning of this? These logic people, critical thinking people, they like big words, don't worry. Our big words are like your name and mine. Look at our names, very long. Nancy, Miles, Bafo, JP, very long. People are managing with mentioning it. So you to manage. Okay, syllogistic. What does it mean? It's from the word syllogism. Syllogism. Okay. Simply meaning you have 2 premises. So there we go. Look up here. When you have an argument which has this nature, the argument looks a certain way. It looks like a certain way. What is that? It has 2 premises. 1, 2. Okay? With a conclusion. This is a deductive argument. I'm pointing on the screen. All student writers and that are example. Okay? So you have 2 premises. 1, 2. And the conclusion that are deductive in way is deductive. Then we call it what? A syllogism. Finito. That's all. So a syllogism is a 3-step kind of reason where 2 of them are what? Premises, and 1 is what? A conclusion. In a deduction, D for Daniel, deduction. Okay. This is therefore what? A syllogism. Modus ponens will be a syllogism. Modus tollens is a syllogism because the reasoning pattern is what? 2 premises, then a conclusion. That's all. That's what syllogism means. Finished. Nothing big. Okay. So what? So we rush quickly to our introduction outline and see what we have covered. We said we will know the contrast between deductive and inductive arguments. Okay. We have seen that sometimes you can move from general premises, oh, so and do, I've done so and so, and end at what? A particular conclusion. And it wasn't deduction after all, it was induction. See the example with most Ghanaians are hospitable. That's a generalization, a statistical generalization. Most Ghanaians are hospitable. My mother is a Ghanaian, therefore she's hospitable. And yet we said the reasoning is not a deduction because we were moving from general premises to particular conclusion, yes, but we didn't fulfill that which we need to make a reasoning deductive, okay? Now, this one we haven't done. Reference class and attribute class, we haven't done. We have done it, but I have not told you that this is it, which is okay. So don't worry. Put that down on your notes for our next session on the unit, okay? We haven't touched on types of generalizations intentionally. I told you, but I haven't, discussed this extensively with you. Most Ghanaians are hospitable. It's a statistical one. We didn't include everyone in the set, so we left some members out. There's an exception to the set anyway. I said that. Most Ghanaians. So that is what? A generalization of a certain type where you leave some of the members out. It's called what? A statistical generalization. Whilst if I said all Ghanaians are hospitable, all women cheat, all this and that one would be what? A universal generalization, which you have met. I've seen this. So you know universal generalization. And you know that when I have a universal generalization, I can open it out to read as what? A conditional. If then, we said that also, okay? So all birds fly. It's just another way of saying, if X is a bird, then X will fly. That is it. If a bird, then it will fly. Okay, so we've done that also. Then we know deduction, and we can distinguish it from induction. Okay, this reference class and attribute class is just one word away, but we'll take time to do like subject and predicate. That's all. But don't worry, when we meet again, I'll intentionally tell you so that you will intentionally learn it too. Okay. Then the second side of the slide, see, we know all these by name at least, and then partially by form and pattern, which is a good sign. We know syllogism, two premises leading to a conclusion in a deduction, not an induction. If it's an induction, it can't be a syllogism. Okay. So when you are deducing and your reasoning is what? Two premises leading us to what? One conclusion. We call it what? A syllogism. That's all. So all the four, Modus Ponens, Modus Tollens, disjunctive syllogism, hypothetical are all what? Syllogisms. It's just that these two came with the name syllogism. But Modus Ponens and Tollens are also syllogisms. Why? Because there will be two premises and then a conclusion deductively related. So they are all syllogisms. You know this. When you don't do them appropriately, then it generates these fallacies, which we'll study a bit more closely. The more you get better at the correct patterns, the more you can tell the incorrect one. If you know the dollar note or the CD note very well, you have worked with it, you've held it, you've counted it, then when someone gives you one that is not original, when you touch it, you can tell Charlie, then you scrutinize it a bit more and then tell that it is a fake one. So we will rather commit more time, to knowing the valid patterns, so that when we now start doing the invalid ones, you see that you can easily tell, oh my dog, this one didn't affirm the antecedent. It rather affirm the consequent and stuff like that. Then you know valid argument just means what? Deduction done correctly, where the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. That is what validity means. And so validity is not necessarily truth. When you say a reasoning pattern is valid, you haven't said that it's what? Actually true. The statements are actually true that we have established that. But when we say an argument is sound, I'm projecting that is sound, then we know that it was already valid and its premises are also actually true out there. We have learned that also. See how much we covered? So much. And then we settle. So here we are. We can take questions and practice. Let's practice. That is what I want us to do. I'm going to give you a general statement. Then you will open it out as a conditional for me and tell me what the antecedent is and what the consequent is. Okay? So all hands down now so that when you are done, I can call you to answer quickly. Now write down this universal statement. All mammals feed their young ones. All mammals feed their young ones. Okay. Now, if we want to find the antecedent, using the variable x, what will be the antecedent of the statement? All mammals feed their young ones. Odum, Benjamin. Your hand is still up. Okay, so I see Eugene Owusu. Eugene Owusu, go ahead. All mammals feed their young ones. What is the antecedent of this universal statement? I want us to use a common variable. So let's all use x.
Please, the antecedent becomes x is a mammal.
Excellent. Well done. That's the antecedent. So in the possible answers, you may likely, you may see x is a mammal. You may see mama. You may see x is. And a lot of people sometimes, I think, would want quickly go and select mama. Mammal is not antecedent. It's a word. Antecedent has to be a complete statement. So our friend Eugene is so correct to tell us that the antecedent is what? X is a mammal. Why? Because I said all mammals feed their young. So what will be the consequent? X does what? All of us, chorus answer, or X
feeds their young.
Feeds their young ones.
Well done. Very good. That's correct. So you know how to open out a universal statement and know the antecedent and the consequent. Now, if you know that, then given this universal statement, develop a modus ponens valid argument. Let me see. From the premise, all mammals feed their young, develop modus ponens. Let's use the variable x. Now we have to put our hand. Clement OJ, go ahead. Anyone who knows should go ahead quickly. Just raise your hand so I'll call you. Clement OJ, your hand is up. Nitisha Samoa, your hand is up also. Is it to answer my question? If not, then I'll take Kobe Wills. All mammals feed their young. We want to do modus ponens. Paul, okay, modus ponens. All mammals feed their young. What should be the next one using variable x to create a modus ponens valid argument? Yeah, Kobe Wills, go ahead. Go ahead.
Doc, please. All x, which is all x feed their young ones.
Let me start for you. All mammals feed their young. We are doing modus ponens. So what should be the next premise?
X feed their young ones.
No, sir. No, that would be affirming the consequent. See,
Okay,
all
that's
mammals.
the antecedent.
You corrected. All mammals feed their young. For modus ponens, what should be the next variable? Say, go ahead.
The antecedent will follow.
What is it? So say it. So all mammals feed their young. X
feed their young.
No, sir. Rudolph, come we listen to Rudolph now. All mammals feed their young.
X is a mammal.
X is a mammal. Therefore,
X feeds their young.
Therefore, X feeds their young. Very good. That will be valid by modus ponens. Okay. So we make sure that right after the main premise, what we do next, please take note, okay, so that you don't make that mistake. So all mammals feed their young. X is a mammal. That's what we know. All mammals. That's the antecedent. So X is a mammal. Therefore, X feeds their young. That will be valid modus ponens. If we did it how Kobe wanted to help us with, then we would have said all mammals feed their young. X feeds their young. That would be a fallacy. It's called a fallacy of affirming the consequent. Okay, we don't want to do that one. So now we know modus ponens. Okay, let's do modus tollens, modus Timothy, with the same preamble, starting from all mammals feed their young. We'll use the variable x. I want Jessica Sari to do that for me. Her hand is up. We are doing tollens now, modus tollens. Jessie, do it for me, please. All mammals feed their young. We are using modus tollens. Quickly. Jessica, are you able to? If not, let me take who else? Daniela Santos. Hey, there are quite a number of us here. They will beat me up. Rudolph Boedi. Rudolph Boedi, please go ahead. All mammals feed their young. Daniela Santi, go ahead.
All mammals feed their young ones. X is not. X does not feed their young ones. Therefore,
Very good.
X
They are all correct. Both of you are correct. Very good. So what they both said was this: all mammals feed their young. X does not. It's a negation. X does not feed their young. Therefore, X is not a mammal. Because we want to do the consequent first, we negate it. That's the pattern for Modus Tollens. You got it. Very good. So all mammals feed their young. S does not feed their young. Therefore, S is not a mammal. That will qualify as a valid pattern by Modus Tollens. So you see that if you put them next to each other, you see that Modus Ponens will affirm the antecedent. How is that? After saying all mammals feed their young, the next premise should say X is a mammal. Then you conclude, therefore, X feeds their young. That's valid. Modus Ponens, we affirm the antecedent. Then the Tollens says all mammals feed their young. X does not feed their young. Therefore, X is not a mammal. So you see that for Tollens, we introduce a negation. And I end on just this note. Take note, if the original is positive, its negation will be what? A negation of the positive will become negative. But if the original is already negative, its negation will be what? Nege-nege-po. A negation of the negation will generate a positive. I'll take the rest of the discussion from there, God willing, next week. Okay. I wish you well. Send me all your comments. These hands that are up are either to read or to respond to a question. If it is actually a question you want to ask me, then I won't stop the recording. Ask that question. I see 6 hands up. So let me find out if Clement OJ has a question. If it's not a question, let me find out if Daniela Santi has a question. Odum Benjamin, is there a question? And then there is Albert. Albert, just drop the hand. I see Mawena Ephraim. Is there a question, sir?
Yeah.
Ask it quickly. We are already up. Our time is already up. Go ahead.
Madam, so according to the Modus Tollens, if maybe the premises, the first one is all mammals feed their young one.
Yes.
And the second premise is you write X is not a mammal, therefore X does not feed its young one. Is it?
It will not be valid. That is not Modus Ponens. Modus Ponens must consistently do the same thing to the end. So if you affirm the antecedent, the conclusion must also affirm the consequence. See, it has to be a pattern, the full pattern. So whatever you are doing, right up to see, all birds fly. Friend, a dove is a bird, therefore a dove flies. When you go and say all birds fly, a bird is a dove, therefore a bird does not fly. You see that you didn't follow through consistently. That will not be Modus Ponens, and it is not also affirming the consequence. You are not following any pattern. Okay. Where the pattern affirms the antecedent and then you conclude by affirming the consequence, we will say that is Modus Ponens. Then where you wrongly affirm the consequent and then you conclude by affirming the antecedent, that pattern, even though wrong, it is a consistent pattern called what? Affirming the consequent. It's a fallacy that has a name. If you mix it, it doesn't even have a name and it is not valid. Okay. All right. I saw Mawina. Mawina also wanted to ask. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Please, could you break down the general statement?
I'm sorry,
Like,
I didn't
as in when you broke the general statement that was all mammals feed their young ones.
Yes,
when it
please.
was
All
broken
mammals
down
feed
into
their young. Yeah. Then I said the
when
first
it was
attempt,
broken,
I said, sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
so could you clarify when it was broken down into the Modus Ponens and Modus Tollens?
Okay, so the starting point is all mammals feed their young. Okay. If I'm developing that into a Modus Ponens valid argument, I will make sure that right after the general statement, the next statement that comes should be a statement that is affirming the antecedent. That simply means you are bringing the antecedent part of the given